Welcome to the Filmcast review of Dumb Money, which is out in limited release right now. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. Dumb Money is the ultimate David versus Goliath tale based on the insane true story of everyday people who flipped the script on Wall Street and got rich by turning GameStop, yes, the mall video game store, into the world's hottest company. End quote. All right. Before we even talk about our thoughts on this, what do we all think about this trend of making movies about stuff that
literally just happened?
That just happened.
Certainly not stopping, is it? Certainly continuing.
I mean, we had movies like We Crashed, The Dropout, and these are movies.
It's been like 5+ years since a lot of those things, or at least those parts of the stories they're telling. This just happened.
Yeah,
this just happened. I'm still like recovering. I've talked to people covering this story, so it's just wild.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel, but I don't know what the utility of it is, right? Like, if this movie had something really deep and profound to say, maybe I'd feel differently. And I guess we'll talk momentarily about whether or not that's the case.
Sure.
But I think it's odd. It's odd because, and I'll just say this, and then I want to hear what Jeff Canada has to say about the movie itself. I think that having some time separation allows you to make more meaning out of the situation, like look back on it and understand it in a different light and
contextualize it.
Yeah. What lessons did we learn from that whole thing? And I don't know that the events of this movie took place, I think, around 3 years ago, 2 years
This
ago.
movie is based on a book. So a book had to be written about those events, then translated into a screenplay and filmed as a movie. I don't know how that happened in 2 years.
Well, the answer to that question is that the book was written by Ben Mesrick. And if that sounds familiar to you, he is the guy that wrote the book on which the movies 21 and The Social Network were based off of. And he once told NP, like his whole deal is, making a book out of real life events, doing it in a very readable way and doing it very quickly. He once told NPR, quote, "My dream was never to win a Pulitzer or win a National Book Award. My dream was always having a tie-in paperback that said, now a major motion picture." End quote. So
mission accomplished, sir.
Mission accomplished
America.
Multiple times.
Hashtag America.
Also the story of this movie.
Well, let's get to the movie. So anyway, it's weird. It's weird that we're making movies out of stuff that just happened. And I think the lack of time really prevents these movies from being that insightful. That's me personally, but let's hear what you guys had to say. So Jeff Canada, what did you think of Dumb Money?
I guess you could say what I thought of Dumb Money is best summed up in the form of a limerick.
All right, let's hear it, Jeff Canada.
I still struggle with an assessment of what the GameStop stock buying quest meant. But once you begin it, this film's 100 minutes itself is a worthy investment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Nice.
Really nice rhymes, too. I like that one, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah. I did not expect to like this movie. I wasn't really interested, to be honest. I remember what I was going to say a second ago, which is I'm sure you guys also remember going through it, living through it, those 3 years ago, saying, everybody was saying, man, this is going to be a movie. This is going to make a movie. They're going to make a movie out of this. Oh, man, this is crazy. This is so nuts. There'll be a movie, and sure enough, here we are. And I did not think I was going to enjoy this movie. I did enjoy this movie. Now, that being said, the summary that you introduced this movie with, which is the ultimate David versus Goliath story, I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know. This movie frames this event as this populist uprising, which I don't know if that is accurate. I don't know. I mean,
it kind of was. I mean,
there's elements of it.
Yeah.
And I think at this point we should say probably we're not going to do a spoiler section for this movie. Probably like it's based off of real life events. So you should assume
listen to the show. You lived through it.
You live through it. You live through it. So
unless you're 2.5,
if you weren't paying attention at all to what happened and you don't want to know the details, then you should assume there's going to be details of what happened in real life in our conversation. But yes, go ahead, Jeff.
There are elements of it that were that, but this movie, yada, yada, yada's a significant series of steps that I wish it hadn't, right? And I don't know, I think it's a much more complicated series of events that went from, hey, guy doing thing in his basement to everybody on board. And the movie just sort of yada, yada, yada is that bit. And it kind of, it manages to weave in several different characters and several different walks of life and use them as stand-ins for a greater mass of people at large, which is clever, but I don't think tells the whole story of what really happened here. Would I have preferred a documentary about this? Yes. Did I still, I think, sort of get won over by charming actors, a sort of rousing story that I don't even necessarily think is completely true or accurately represents the tenor of what went down here? But if I just look at it as a movie instead of a record of events, it's a pretty good movie. It's a pablum, right? It's a Band-Aid, as Hollywood often is, over actual problems. And it presents this notion that, oh my gosh, we did something. We did something.
We're going to make a difference.
We affected real change when we did not. You know,
there's this scene in Succession when Roman, the kind of F-up son at the time, he encourages his father to shut down a massive division of the company. And he has no reason for saying why they should do this, but he's just like, it's what I felt like saying. And then his girlfriend at the time says, you did a thing. You did a thing. And it wasn't like you did a good thing. It wasn't like you did it well. It's just you did a thing.
Affected change.
This movie is like the you did a thing. Of
yes, and
of personal investment.
So I'm of two minds here, because part of my mind is like, that's insufficient in this case, right? That's insufficient in explaining this phenomenon or representing this period of time that is so recent that I recall it vividly. But the other part of me says, if I sort of accept the premise, which is Hollywood wants me to walk into a movie, pay my $14 and walk out feeling good about the world, it accomplished that, and did so charmingly, and it presented characters that I enjoyed hanging out with for the period of time I was watching them. I actually think as a film, it was pretty well made, and I enjoyed it.
It moves, and
it
it's
moves.
Like, it's in and out. You're 90 minutes and you're done.
Like Craig Gillespie.
I had a great time with this. I had a much better time with this movie than I anticipated, even if what it represents is potentially disturbing. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, glad you had a good time, Jeff Kanata. How about you, Devindra Hardawar? What'd you think of Dumb Money?
I liked it overall as a movie. I think it's a lot of fun, mainly because there were some really smart decisions here. Like, I think the screenplay, which is co-written by two people who did Orange is the New Black, Lauren Schuker-Bloom and Rebecca Angelo, like, they clearly have a good sense of the story. Bringing in separate characters to give different perspectives to it, I think works well. But also, whoever casts this movie is a genius, because just like almost every role is filled with people who you either recognize or who are at least very good at portraying the kind of person they're meant to. I think specifically, Seth Rogen is kind of amazing here as sort of like not quite a billionaire, but a successful hedge fund guy who wants to be a billionaire and has billionaire friends. And I was struck thinking, like, man, this guy has come a far way from portraying like a high school, loser in Freaks and Geeks, right? To now where he could just successfully be, he's just a very rich man. He's fully in command of this world. But I think the casting all around is fantastic. And they, like, everybody just makes this movie really enjoyable. It's a strong script. It's really funny. It moves quite a lot. I just felt really weird watching it, because not only did I live through this story, like, I covered part of this too. Like, it's something that I've talked about as part of my job. And so to see it like consumed and like recontextualized in dramatic movie form, I think feels like a little bit like Whiplash. It just feels like I guess we're used to seeing this from like maybe a YouTuber or something, somebody who's really good at like breaking down information and reconveying it. But to be a Hollywood movie that it's in limited release right now, but it was pretty much every New York theater I saw, has a huge cast, has like a pretty decent budget, it seems like too. So to see it immediately go through the Hollywood machine, this is ostensibly a story about it is about retail investors. It's about normal people who are following trends on Reddit, and they feel out of the loop because our entire banking system, our stock system, or the entire financial system is not built for normal humans. It's built for the big machines. It's built for the investment banks and the people who have money. So to see this like start with like a Sony Corporation logo, I feel like it's just there are so many like incongruous things going on in this movie. But no, I had a good time with it. I'm still thinking about like what this ultimately means for the way we like think about history, because I think history is best made, with a little bit of time and context and like thinking done into it. There is a bit of that here. I don't think this movie totally it is trying to make a point, but I wonder if it may be a little too pat. I wonder if like I almost wonder if it's like a little insidious in that the movie is going to be the version of the story a lot of people see, and I think by the end you'll be like, yeah, change happened, right? Like these retail investors, they did a thing, but also it was a good thing. They really stuck it to the man, right? And moving forward, this will never happen again. It's true. This will never happen again because it's meant to protect the interests of billionaires and bankers and investment banks. So yeah, it's never going to happen again because a lot of the financial institutions and government regulations have reshifted to keep those folks safe. And the movie does show that, like, hey, this guy really fucked up, but his friends came in and saved him to the tune of billions of dollars. Those points are made in the movie, but I almost feel like it should have been a little bleaker. Like this feels like what Fincher brought to the end of The Social Network, right? Which is a far less realistic movie, like totally invents situations and characters and what people are doing. But I think cuts to more of the truth of what was happening than maybe this movie does.
Right.
It's almost like if the end of Rudy, it was like, and they never allowed another walk on again.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, he did it. He really did it, everybody.
He did it. Good job.
The system decided no more walk-ons.
Never again. Yeah. I think, Social Network was obviously written by Aaron Sorkin, and he wanted to kind of remake it as a Shakespearean tragedy about friends that like fell out from each other, which like there are many components of that were accurate, but I agree with you, Devindra. I might disagree with you about what The Social Network is trying to say, but I agree with you that like that The Social Network uses these events to try to say something.
Yeah. And Fincher is a lot more cynical. And I feel like this movie could have maybe used a little more of that.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's a big part of that. I think also the situation that the movie tried to cover is too complex.
Yes.
For the 100-minute runtime. So I'll just give an example. Robinhood is an app that many people use to invest in GameStop, and there's a whole thing that like went wrong when they shut down trading on Robinhood.
The Winter Soldier is one of the CEOs of Robinhood. That is where we are, man. So weird.
And that whole situation that could be a movie in and of itself. That whole everything that went down there and so on. And
that's more interesting than the WeWork scenario.
But it's kind of just like a footnote in this movie. And so like that's just one example of how the movie's reach exceeds its grasp to some degree. I think that at the end of the movie, I feel like a lot like Jeff felt, which is, hey, I had a great time with this. It's a perfectly cromulent film. It's a perfectly fine, enjoyable film.
I think it's more than cromulent. Like it is genuinely good. Like it's a genuinely good
Cromutastic.
It's cromutastic. More than a good sit. I think it's funny. Like
I love that you're referring to it as though cromulent is an understandable term that we all know the definition of.
I mean, it is.
Yeah,
we all grew up.
So you liked it more than you. Cromulent is it a synonym for fine? Right?
Like it does distill the story to the point where a general audience can go and watch it and laugh. Because these situations are ridiculous, and having recognizable stars, convey this information, I think makes it more effective for a lot of people. I do want to say, like, there are little bits of specificity I really liked here. I really liked Keith Gill's basement setup.
Yeah, because it felt very true to life.
Felt very.
He has
true.
a little GoPro that's like it felt like the tech. we all have like fairly sophisticated streaming setups, so we all
Barely,
game recognize game. Like we all know, like
I understand. Like there's tape holding certain things together. It's like, I understand like what that is like, but also like little bits of things. Like Dane DeHaan is in this movie playing like a kind of a shitty local GameStop manager, and when that character appeared, he wears a mask most of the time. I was like, I've worked for like retail stores and had shitty managers like that. It's like that character is spot on. He even has like a little terrible little rat tail. If you really look, he has like that behind him. But also you could tell it's Dane DeHaan because he has a very specific intonation.
Yeah.
It's little things like that. I think the movie does do right. It's the broader picture that I'm a little more worried about. Yeah.
What I think the movie does provide a really valuable insight into is what that period of time was like in America, right? Which is like, it's rare to go see a movie that took place during the pandemic where people are actually wearing masks in situations where it would make sense for them to wear masks. I think they like decided, if we're going to make this movie about GameStop, we can't ignore the pandemic because that's a significant part of why people decided to do some of the things that they did. And so I appreciated that they had sometimes long scenes where people were wearing like recognizable stars and actors wearing masks through the entire scene. Of course, my perspective on the mask wearing is mixed because on the one hand, you have Dane DeHaan being using mask wearing as an asshole, and like that, like him being really rigid about masks, and fuck him for trying to keep Anthony Ramos safe, right? But
no, that is unfortunately the tone. That is the legacy of that period of time, and there's nothing we're going to be able to do to change it.
It's
right?
true. It's true. I think the movie does do like a pretty well-rounded job of it though, right? Like you see people being dicks about masks, but a lot of times masks are just used with no commentary at all. And that I also appreciate. Also the fact that every time there's a billionaire, he is unmasked.
Yes.
And everyone around him is masked. And it's
all
like,
his minions are masked.
Everyone needs to breathe his particles, but like he can't breathe their part. And so like I appreciated that it showed these things, even if I don't like the fact that it shows like just because mask wearing is such a loaded cultural element right now for reasons I can't comprehend. But the fact that they showed all these different kind of ideas of masks, I appreciate it. And it does provide this useful snapshot. Like we can look back years from now and watch this movie and get a pretty good sense of like what that time in our lives was like. And I appreciate it. Has some value. I think
it's pretty clear that the history has already been written that mask wearing is perceived in general as this stupid thing we all did. Like, and I think that's sad.
Even though we are entering a new season of COVID and we like, you gotta get those masks out, people.
Right. I wear a mask. Go ahead.
I think even the most strident, safety conscious folks of that time at this point, it's weird to me that there's the accepted truth is, it was pretty dumb for us all to wear masks. Like, it hurts my heart a little bit, but
it depends on who you ask. It does depend on who you ask.
Certainly, that's not the accepted truth on this podcast, obviously.
No, of course not. But I think there's a lot of people who don't.
The cultural opinion of it is
like I said, the history has been written, right? I think like that's the way it's going to be remembered in the long tail of history. Is this like
Right, and I think it's sad, and I think you're right, Jeff, that there is some value that the movie preserves that in some way, right? Like, and so, but anyway, for the record, I'm one of the few people I know that still masks anytime I'm inside with other people that I don't know. So, but I know that makes me a minority, like someone who's in the minority.
Or maybe we just have to get used to like doing it more. When you're getting to cold and flu season, do it more. So,
that would be awesome.
Summer was free.
That'd be awesome if we had any kind of rational conversation about it. But
we cared about other people in any way whatsoever.
Anyway,
that'd be great. Whatever. Anyway, okay, so. The thing that really kind of chafes about this movie, though, so we're gonna talk about the ending of the movie now. So here we go. I know we've been spoiling the whole time, and by the way, the events of the movie took place in 2021, not 2020. So like even later than we thought.
Even later.
Is
this summer, last Tuesday, in theaters. Go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. The ending text is really silly, I think, because the movie basically ends with, hey, Melvin Capital had to shut down, and the investors never could ignore dumb money ever again, and dumb money being a saying for retail investors, like private citizens.
It's very much that's the end of that chapter, folks.
Yes.
Exactly.
Roll credits.
It's like, oh, so now the big investors, institutional investors, have yet another tool to get one over on the little guy. Like, because now they're monitoring everything that we're, so it's like, the movie wants to give you this sense of like victory, but it's like, this is a tiny blip. It's barely a fart in the history of, big money dominating everyone else, right? Like it seems like you guys are agreeing with me that
100%.
Very weird, incongruous.
It
needed to be a darker movie, right? It needed to be a darker movie given what actually happened, I think, right?
Yep.
So
this is why I was talking about the Fincher thing. Whereas I think like at least his worldview, not the most optimistic guy
cynical.
around.
Very cynical.
He's very cynical, but also kind of needed that too. Like there was, I think like it may just be Gillespie, right? Like Gillespie is so good at being an energetic storyteller, right? Like I, Tonya, his TV work with Physical, and like he's done a lot of TV work at this point. Like he is just so good at making something engaging and punchy. And sometimes you just got to feel bad. And I think this movie is too afraid to let people feel bad sometimes because I feel bad.
It's an irresistible David and Goliath story where it's like, hey, this is one time the little guy actually got some. This guy started with $50,000 and was able to convert it to millions of dollars, right? Like that's an amazing story.
I know people who've made money, like doing the GameStop stuff. Like it is. You're probably not too far separated from people who were participating in this.
If we had all dumped our life savings into GameStop. At the beginning of this
and got out,
we probably wouldn't even be doing this podcast anymore. So that could have been life changing for us. But the problem is obviously like the broader context in which it's taking place under, which is that institutional investors do have a lot more tools and a lot more advantages. And I'm glad that the movie doesn't shy away from that, because you do see like Melvin Capital is bailed out and nothing happens to the Robin Hood people. Like,
and the retail investors,
they're not rich, or they're less rich than they would have been if they actually handled it well.
But the normal people get hurt, like they lose money. Like especially I feel so bad for America Ferrera's character. Like
right.
It just happens to a lot of them. But that idea too, like there is a running undercurrent that the idea that anybody is just like so eager to like put all their savings into like one thing in this mysterious app, which is the idea that you can have a stock trading app that doesn't require fees, always felt fishy to me, but okay, here's $50,000. Here's I'm chasing the American dream. And there is something sad about that too. Like that is what we a lot of people reflexively do, because we kind of feel powerless under the system of capitalism, right? So you take whatever little bits you can get. And I also would have loved for the movie to maybe wrestle with that a little more too, but that's not fun. So
I mean, it's not even that, Devindra. On Robinhood, you can trade in such a way that you can lose an infinite amount.
Yes.
You don't even need money that you can. Anyway, it's wild what is allowed on there. But one other thing I want to praise the movie about is the last 5 years, money has felt really weird, and
you shouldn't roll around on it so much, Dave.
Exactly. Because you have this thing like GameStop. Remember the AMC became a meme stock as well. NFTs were a huge deal for a while. Now
I can't wait till that movie comes out.
They're mostly worthless now. Bitcoin. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's a thing where you could like this guy. There's a story of the guy who bought 2 pieces of Bitcoin that would have been like millions of dollars now if he had just saved that money instead of buying 2 pieces. Like basically like. I think for much of our lives have associated, if you work hard, you can make money and eventually hopefully become rich. Where it's like, no, some people aren't doing jack shit. They're just buying Bitcoin and now they're rich, or they're buying GameStop and now they're rich. And it's like our sense of money has been kind of unmoored. And I do think that the movie
not just the last 5 years. It's like since the 2008 financial crisis. Like it is since like Dave, we essentially entered the workforce into shit. Like the world fell apart, and then Bank of America.
It's true that stocks and hedge funds, like those have been around for a long time. But I guess I would say money as accessible to like financial instruments as accessible to regular people.
Well, I'm
peeling
this history
than usual.
I'm peeling this history back because you're bringing up Bitcoin, and Bitcoin happened as a direct result of the '08 crisis. So like Bitcoin
that's true.
ended up being invented like 2009, 2010 or so. Like this stuff is all connected. But even like I bought a house in 2020, right? And dealing with the most money I ever have, my realtor just kept saying like, oh yeah, money's free right now because interest rates were so low. Like things were just so weird. So the system like just does not make much sense.
Right.
I think that's ultimately it. So
I think this movie does a decent job of like capturing this idea of like, oh, this guy can make $30 million in like 6 months. You know, like that's just a wild concept that I think the movie does a good job of capturing. So anyway, any other thoughts?
Good music in this movie too. Like I think it is a good selection of things that really crystallize how insane this entire time frame was. So when you open with WAP and you kind of deserve it, okay, good job movie. Yeah.
Any other thoughts, Jeff Kanata, on Dumb Money?
No, I think you guys are summing it up. It is it plays like I think a fantasy,
right?
Even though it's literally a movie about 2.5 years ago. It's I don't.
Dewey Cox died 3 minutes after this movie ended. Basically, it's like
yes,
it's like they got the they got the money, but also the bad guys got away, and now you can't.
It was the ending text basically, and we never saw Keith Gill again. He's gone.
Yeah, it's like if Oppenheimer ended with, and that's all we ever heard about the atom bomb. It's like, wait, what?
I think okay, folks. Shout out to every bit player in this movie too. Like, I think that Pete Davidson, Paul Dano together. Paul Dano, like really just like leading this thing. Like I think he did a great job of encapsulating like a nerdy guy.
Yeah,
like just like that bit, but also everybody like D'Onofrio, Nick Offerman as the billionaires. Just like really, there's those scenes with D'Onofrio's character with the pig in the house. And just like that's some Pink Floyd shit. Right there, just like
those guys
just
can do smarm, man.
Yeah, just so good. Myha'la Harold from Industry, great to see her in a big Hollywood movie. Anthony Ramos, like everybody, I love seeing everybody here. Even freaking Olivia Thirlby shows up at some point. I'm like, yes,
I know.
Where have you been?
Olivia Thirlby was so good in Dread, guys. She was incredible in Dread, and it's like she needs to work more. Like I wish she had more roles because she was awesome in Dread.
She was in Oppenheimer. She was in Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer. Yeah, for like 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, underrated actor Olivia Thirlby.
Great casting in this movie.
Yeah, I'll underscore the Paul Dano thing because he, he's such an interesting actor. But as a result is often playing real weirdos, and it's kind of fun. It's nice to see him as just like an everyman in this movie. I
mean, he's a pretty kind of a weirdo though. Like it's the thing.
I don't know.
Like,
I think
it's your financial analyst friend.
Yeah, but he's still like
he's within one standard deviation of normcore.
I mean, he loves cats
in this movie. Yeah.
He loves cats, and he makes videos about cats. And it's like there's a certain like nerdiness to him that I think he's one step removed from the Riddler. Basically, right? Like he either use that power for good.
I don't think so. I thought that
I love him.
He played in this movie much more like a normal, relatable person than he often is given a chance to play. I mean, he's got a wife and kid. He's like living a normal life, and not the Riddler.
Clancy Brown's his dad. Amazing.
One thing I appreciate about this film is it gives you an insight into the psychology of why someone would quote unquote hold in that situation, like, because you think to yourself, oh, my net worth was $50,000 or $100,000 6 months ago. Now it's 20 million.
Yeah. It's called gambling, David. It's called gambling.
I'm not going to sell any, like, it's like, you're not even going to take your principal off the table at least, but it's because he followed this principle.
I hit blackjack. All I have to do is keep sitting here, and I'll continue to hit blackjack.
I mean, I talked to people who made not millions, but a decent chunk of money from GameStop stuff, and like that, there was the Robin Hood idea or the David and Goliath idea was kind of a thing. It did feel like a lot of people felt they were sticking it to Wall Street and to all these other investors. So like that was part of it.
But the investors also benefited. Like a lot of investors also benefited. So it's like, and the movie is really not super clear on that, right?
The perverse part of it was that people thought they had control.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was the dangerous. Even as it was happening, I was like, my friends are like, you can't lose because we are propping up the value.
Right.
And it's like,
yeah.
You forget about the government. You forget about regulators.
You do not have the control here. And that was the lie. That was the false pretext that people bought into, that I think made a lot of people lose their shirts on this thing, because it was like, all we got to do is have diamond hands and we can't lose. And I think the movie doesn't. I mean, we have the America
Ferrera does come out like a little bit worse than she went in.
But I still think
you're
that,
right.
The tone of the movie is she loved being a part of it. And it enriched her life.
What a great ride.
Yeah.
So the movie doesn't really show the dark side of, like, as you said, some people lost a shit ton of money on it. That's not conveyed either.
It does show like a form of online community, which does exist and can affect real world change. So that's all part of it too.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, mixed bag. But hey, it's impressive that Craig Gillespie made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.